Today is Friday, March 27th, 2026, and this is Read Through the Bible.
Hi, everyone.
And we're doing this remote again because you are in Iowa.
That's right. I am with Hannah and Derek now. I arrived on Wednesday and just kind of getting settled here. And I think, it's amazing to see baby Lakin, and he's so cute. He's very dark, just like Hannah was when she was a baby. Like, I feel like when I'm holding Lakin, I'm looking at Hannah when she was a baby.
And you can remember that even from so long ago.
I just do. It just all comes back. So
Wow.
he's just got so many similar features, and the amount of hair he has and how dark it is just like Hannah. So he's adorable. And so I'm just right now working on planning out meals I'm going to make and going grocery shopping and just trying to do whatever I can to help.
Okay. We're starting a new book.
That's right. We're starting Esther.
Yeah.
A pretty well-known book of the Bible.
Yeah.
Just because of children's stories, and it's a wonderful story.
Yeah. In fact, I've heard it called novella, just because it's like a small novel.
It's got all the elements in there.
Yeah, it's got humor, it's got irony, it's got drama, it has heroes, it has villains. It has, turns of events.
An orphan rising to queen.
Yes. So this is a book which is read by the Jewish people every year at the Feast of Purim.
Yeah, that's a holiday that they have every spring.
Yeah, I've thought about doing it at Rock Valley Bible Church. It just never has kind of come to fruition, where what they do is they gather together and they read it out loud and they cheer for their heroes and they boo for their villains, and it becomes like this interactive story of what's read. Okay, but this is a story about a Jewish woman, maiden, who rises to become a queen of Persia and actually then becomes the instrument by which saving the people of Israel from mass destruction.
Right.
Okay, let's just read the story, and we're just going to let the whole story unfold. We're going to read today the first 2 chapters of the book of Esther. Now, in the days of Ahasuerus, now, as we were studying and thinking about the different kings. The Persian kings are difficult to understand.
Because they seem to repeat names, and so that gets confusing. Like, there's maybe 2 Dariuses and 2 Artaxerxes, and there's Cyrus, who's who, and what's the timeline.
Yeah, and sometimes the kings are called by similar names, or like different names.
Right,
so Xerxes and Ahasuerus, like these are different forms of the same name.
Right, some of it is just a translation or transliteration issue.
Yeah. So some, it would be difficult. It's a little bit like the Bushes, right? President Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, or George W. Bush.
John Quincy Adams.
Yeah, so they're different kings we're referring to, but sometimes even different names. But just know that Persian kings and their names are just difficult. So anyway, now in the days of Ahasuerus, the Ahasuerus, who reigned from India to Ethiopia in over 127 provinces, in those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne in Susa, the citadel, in the 3rd year of his reign, he gave a feast for all his officials and servants. The army of Persia and Media and the nobles and governors of the provinces were before him, while he showed the riches of his royal glory and the splendor and pomp of his greatness for many days, 180 days.
That's a long party.
It's a long feast, 6-month feast, yes. You're invited to come to a feast. It's 6 months long.
Vacation.
And when these days were completed, the king gave for all the people present in Susa, the citadel, both great and small, a feast lasting for 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace. And there were white cotton curtains and violet hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rods, and marble pillars, and also couches of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of porphyry, marble, mother of pearl, and precious stones.
Wow.
Drinks were served in golden vessels of different kinds, and the royal wine was lavished according to the bounty of the king, and drinking was according to this edict. There is no compulsion. For the king had given orders to all the staff of his palace to do as each man desired. This is like open bar.
Boy.
Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women in the palace that belonged to King Ahasuerus.
On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king with her royal crown, in order to show the peoples and the princes her beauty, for she was lovely to look at. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, delivered by the eunuchs. At this, the king became enraged, and his anger burned within him.
Then the king said to the wise men who knew the times, for this was the king's procedure toward all who were versed in law and judgment, the men next to him being Karshana, Sethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Mar, Sena, and Meucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media who saw the king's face and sat first in the kingdom. According to the law, what is to be done to Queen Vashti, because she has not performed the command of King Ahasuerus delivered by the eunuchs? Then Memucan said in the presence of the king and the officials, not only against the king has Queen Vashti done wrong, but also against all the officials and all the peoples who are in the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will be made known to all women, causing them to look at their husbands with contempt, since they will say, King Ahasuerus commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, and she did not come. This very day the noble women of Persia and Media who have heard of the queen's behavior will say the same to all the king's officials, and there will be contempt and wrath in plenty. If it please the king, let a royal order go out from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, so that it may not be repealed, that Vashti is never again to come before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal position to another who is better than she. So when the decree was made by the king, is proclaimed throughout all the kingdom, for it is vast, all women will give honor to their husbands, high and low alike. This advice pleased the king and the princes, and the king did as Memucan proposed. He sent letters to all the royal provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every man in its own language, that every man be master in his own household, and speak according to the language of his people.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah, what was right? So basically, as we look for kind of a summary here of Esther chapter 1, we've got this feast. Queen Vashti refused to come, and she's banished then from the king's presence, and the king sends letters to all to the effect that every man be master in his own household.
Mm-hmm. Okay, chapter 2. After these things, when the anger of King Ahasuerus had abated, he remembered Vashti and what she had done and what had been decreed against her. Then the king's young men who attended him said, Let beautiful young virgins be sought out for the king, and let the king appoint officers in all the provinces of his kingdom to gather all the beautiful young virgins to the harem in Susa the citadel, under the custody of Haggai, the king's eunuch, who is in charge of the women. Let their cosmetics be given them, and let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This pleased the king, and he did so.
Now there was a Jew in Susa, the citadel, whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjaminite, who had been carried away from Jerusalem among the captives, carried away with Jeconiah, the king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away. He was bringing up Hadassah, that is, Esther, the daughter of his uncle, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. And when her father and her mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter, and so when the king's order by his edict were proclaimed, and when many young women were gathered in Susa, the citadel, in custody of Haggai, Esther also was taken into the king's palace and put in custody of Haggai, who had charge of the women. And the young woman pleased him and won his favor, and he quickly provided her with her cosmetics and her portion of food, and with 7 chosen young women from the king's palace, and advanced her and her young women to the best place in the harem. Esther had not made known her people or kindred, for Mordecai had commanded her not to make it known. And every day Mordecai walked in front of the court of the harem to learn how Esther was and what was happening to her.
Verse 12. Now, when the turn came for each young woman to go into King Ahasuerus after being 12 months under the regulations for the women, since this was the regular period of their beautifying, 6 months with oil of myrrh and 6 months with spices and ointments for women, When the young woman went into the king in this way, she was given whatever she desired to take with her from the harem to the king's palace. In the evening she would go in, and in the morning she would return to the second harem in custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch, who was in charge of the concubines. She would not go into the king again unless the king delighted in her and she was summoned by name.
When the turn came for Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her as her own daughter to go into the king, she asked for nothing except what Haggai, the king's eunuch, who had charge of the women, advised. Now Esther was winning favor in the eyes of all who saw her. And when Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus into his royal palace in the 10th month, which is the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign, the king loved Esther more than all the women, and she won grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king gave a feast for all his officials and servants. It was Esther's feast. He also granted a remission of taxes to the provinces and gave gifts with royal generosity. Just bringing joy to the kingdom.
Right, give people a reason to rejoice.
The king has chosen his wife after all these one-night stands. Yeah.
Verse 19, Now, when the virgins were gathered together the second time, Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate. Esther had not made known her kindred or her people, as Mordecai had commanded her, for Esther obeyed Mordecai just as when she was brought up by him. In those days, as Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, who guarded the threshold, became angry and sought to lay hold on King Ahasuerus. And this came to the knowledge of Mordecai, and he told it to Queen Esther, and Esther told the king in the name of Mordecai. When the affair was investigated and found to be so, the men were both hanged on the gallows. And it was recorded in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king.
That little story will come up later as a turn of events. But here we see basically Esther's crowned queen, not king. And Mordecai then reveals his plot of Bigthan and Teresh. That's what's taking place.
An assassination
Attempt, yep. And was subverted because of this Jewish man, Mordecai. What a great story. Like, we read through that hardly commenting at all, like not even feeling the need to comment because the story. Yeah, it just kind of explains itself. Yeah, and hopefully we can do this. We go along just because the story really tells itself. Mm-hmm. Okay, we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.